This is Game Night with Josh Hinnick.
It's good!
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
And he scored!
Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Josh Hinnick.
Phillies win the home opener. Not exactly the way you thought it'd play out, but in baseball, sometimes you just gotta expect the unexpected. Josh Hinnick hanging out with you here on 97.3 ESPN. A day like today, it's hard to get away from the Phillies and opening day. I mean, if we have time to get to the Eagles stuff, I will. We can always get to it tomorrow. But, you know, the two big topics of the day are, and you guys can join the conversation at 609-403-0973, your DMs into the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle. So when you look at this game for the Phillies, and we'll get into that, as well as the Flyers have suddenly won 2 straight games since the firing of John Tortorella. How much can we really read into it? Because I heard a theory over the weekend for why the Flyers are playing the way they are, and I want to get Kevin Durso, our Flyers insider's take on it. Again, you know, it's one of the things where a day like today, we got 2 teams to talk about. The Eagles will still be there tomorrow. So if we get to the Eagles today, we can. If we can't, I promise you I have a lot of stuff to get to with the Eagles, because some of the stuff that's going on with this tush-push, with Howie Roseman had to say down at the owners' meetings, we got to get to all that. But first, Phillies win opening day. And days like today make you realize what makes baseball special is the unexpected. A day like today shows you that even when the game doesn't go the way you thought it would, it can still be a fun day. And I thought that today's win was important for you, the fan. Because for the fan out there, a game like today was so important for you to be reminded, because Sunday was the last game you saw, and it was frankly a pretty deflating game. Okay, if we're being completely honest, that game was absolutely deflating. It was absolutely just blah, right? And then today was the kind of day that maybe awakens your passion and love for the Phillies again. But again, it did not go as expected, because the Phillies were losing this game. There was a point in time where, yes, the Phillies won the game 6-1, but they are at one point losing 1-0. When Sanchez gave up that home run to Goodman, you first realized that Sanchez is not going to end up winning this game on the stat sheet. So there was no real reason to keep him out there anymore. The Phillies, up until the 7th inning, had scored 0 runs. It was as soon as Marquez came out of the game. And, you know, these are the kind of games that I feel for some of these guys, but this is going to be the way the Phillies are going to win a lot of games this year. There are a lot better starting pitchers in Major League Baseball than there are bullpen pitchers. The bullpens in today's baseball are full of guys who are only there because teams have to fill out rosters, not because they are Major League pitchers. As soon as the Phillies got into the Rockies bullpen, and we saw the same thing over the weekend on Saturday when the Phillies destroyed the Nationals bullpen. We saw the same thing on opening day last Thursday when they got to the Nats bullpen as well for that game. This is now a Phillies team that has won 3 games this year because they waited out the other team's starter. They got to the other team's bullpen, and they absolutely had breakfast, lunch, and dinner ready. The Rockies bullpen, over the course of 2 innings, allowed 6 runs. The Phillies took full advantage of a Rockies bullpen that is arguably just not good. And if you were to ask me who the worst bullpen is in baseball, I don't even know right now, because I feel like when I'm watching baseball the last few days, everyone's bullpen stinks on some level. I mean, we're all sitting here in the Ocean Casino Resort studios, me and Mike Gill looking over like, oh, here comes Jason Romano. What's he going to do? Is he going to do anything? So bullpens in today's game is about survival than it is about who actually has a good bullpen. So for me, I'm looking at the Phillies win today as an example of how they're probably going to win a lot of games this year. They're going to win a lot of games because they wait out the other team's good pitcher, and then they get to the bullpen. They wait for the circumstances to line up for them, and then they take advantage of it. And that's pretty much going to be how this Phillies team is probably going to win 60 of their 95 games this year. They're going to win those games because, well, every team has at least one Mackenzie Gore, Herman Marquez, so on and so forth. Most of those teams don't have a good enough bullpen to withstand the onslaught of the Phillies bats. And I think that's going to be the make or break for this Phillies team this year. You saw a team that got some big hits. I mean, the Edmundo Sosa RBI double, to me, was the thing, what was the moment that really opened the floodgates. Because once that happened, it was as if the Rockies pitchers realized they were toast. It was as if at that moment in time, the Rockies pitchers realized they got nothing. Because it was after that Schwarber hit that massive home run and Kepler hit that bomb almost to the second deck. The Phillies basically said, oh, you were out of good pitchers. Watch this. And then, boom, offense explosion. That's pretty much what happened. And again, I'm not saying that that's the only way the Phillies are going to win games this year. But what I am saying is that is probably in line with the style of game the Phillies are going to win more often than not. Because more often than not, it's going to be a low-scoring game through the first 5 innings. Because again, most teams in Major League Baseball have a couple of good starting pitchers. But I would argue maybe only 10 teams have good bullpens. And so this is a style of baseball that the Phillies can take advantage of more often than not. And probably the bigger story of all is, as I was telling Mike Gill earlier today before the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. Josh Hennick hanging out with you on a Monday night. Moving forward, the Phillies will only see 2 left-handed pitchers in their next 7 games. So they got 2 more against the Rockies, Wednesday, Thursday. They had the 3-game series against the Dodgers, Friday through Sunday. And then the Atlanta Braves series in Atlanta next Tuesday through Thursday. And because they will only see 2 left-handed starters on that entire stretch, they can pretty much trot out their primary offense moving forward. They don't have to worry about Marsh, Stott, or any of that stuff. And frankly, I thought it was a pretty savvy move by the Phillies today to pinch hit for Marsh with Trey Turner. One, because frankly, if Trey Turner's healthy enough, you're better off with his bat on the field than not in the lineup. And number 2, Marsh is pretty much an abomination against left-handed pitching. He just can't hit it very well. You could argue that Marsh is among the bottom third of Major League Baseball left-handed hitters against left-handed pitching. So that was a smart play, and it worked out for the Phillies because they walked Turner, and then Turner was able, because he's faster than most of the guys on this team, he was able to score on the Sosa double. So that was a very smart move that paid off for Rob Thompson, the Phillies manager. Now, on top of all of this, the Phillies have some favorable matchups coming up. As I mentioned, they got 2 more games against the Rockies. And only one of those games is against a left-handed pitcher. And number 2, it would be an opportunity to look at how you stack up against the 2 other teams that came into this season among the league favorites. That being the Dodgers, who you will see 2 of their good pitchers this weekend, and a Braves team that has started the season out 0-4. If you can find a way to salvage 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers, and then go to Atlanta and take 2 out of 3 against them, you're going to be walking around with a sense of pride and accomplishment that might be able to carry you for the next few weeks. Because sometimes in sports, winning is all that matters. And that can be the biggest confidence builder of all. Jeff from Ocean City chimes in on the DMs. Of course, you can join the conversation, 609-403-0973. Your DMs into the 973 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. And we are live on my YouTube channel at Josh Hennig. Jeff from Ocean City says, these Phillies games are fun when we are beating up on the bums. I'm very excited for the weekend series against the Dodgers. Well, Jeff, the thing about the Dodgers series is it's not like the Dodgers are as untouchable as people made them out to be coming into the season. Because you're talking about 3 pitchers who are going to present very, very, very different scenarios. Now, you could argue at this point in time, Yamamoto is their best pitcher. But you're throwing Luzardo out there, and having a lefty going against the Dodgers might be a bit of an equalizer at this point. The Glasnow versus Sanchez matchup on Sunday might be the best matchup of the weekend, because you have the 2 pitchers who are arguably the most talented on both teams. And this will be Tyler Glasnow's first start of the season. He has not pitched a game yet because of the craziness of the Dodgers schedule. Remember, the Dodgers, they started the season in Japan for a couple games, then went back to spring training, and then came back to the regular season. And in that entire time, there was no Glasnow starting any of those games. It was Yamamoto, it was Sasaki, it was Snell, not Glasnow. So we don't know, how does Glasnow not playing any games from spring training basically 2 weeks ago until April 6th. Sanchez looked good today, but I think Sanchez's potential is more than what we saw today. So I would argue that the Sanchez-Glasnow matchup on Sunday is the biggest of the 3 matchups. The in-between game is where it gets interesting. Nola pitched well until the end of the game yesterday. Nola looked pretty good until he didn't. Nola went out there and was cruising along, and then just boom, home run. And it was like, oh boy, here we go again. On the other side, Sasaki, this dude looks completely lost so far in the major leagues. In 2 starts, he has 9 walks, and he has given up 3 earned runs in 4 2/3 innings. You could see 2 opposite games this weekend. You could see the Saturday game take the over on the runs, and on the Sunday game take the under on the runs. So I am with you, Jeff. I am definitely looking forward to the weekend series against the Dodgers because there's obviously a lot of interesting matchups, a lot of intrigue, a lot of opportunity to see a lot of interesting scenarios play out. So I am definitely looking forward to that. By the way, the Atlanta Braves outfielder Jerickson Profar has been suspended 80 games for violating MLB's PED policy. That just came down a few minutes ago. So if Profar is unavailable moving forward, that's another blow to a Braves team that just can't find a way to win lately. They have looked really, really bad. So that's interesting. Profar being injured. That is a huge blow for that team. Now, I will bring up really quick before we get the break, because we have Kevin Durso, our Flyers insider, coming up on the other side. I was talking with someone over the weekend, and it initially looked like that none of the Phillies games were going to be on local television. That has suddenly changed. Now, I don't know if it has changed because someone intervened and said something, or if it changed because this was the plan all along. But as of last night, every Phillies-Dodgers game was supposed to be not on the local affiliate. It just came out earlier today that is no longer the case. So let me break it down, the Dodgers series, for those of you who are going to want to watch the Phillies games this weekend. Friday is Apple TV+. It will not be on NBC Sports Philadelphia in any capacity. So yes, for that specific game, that will not be on the local TV. And if you don't have Apple TV+, you basically have two options. One, find a local establishment that has it, that is going to show the game. Or two, if you have already subscribed for Apple TV Plus and you ran out with your subscription previously, find a new email address and put it on there. Okay? That's my recommendation. The Saturday game, which was originally only supposed to be on FS1, they just today said it will also be on NBC Sports Plus. Now, is that because someone said something or because that was the plan all along? The game on Sunday, which is the schedule magnet game for all fans who attend, the 1:35 first pitch for the Dodgers, that game will now be shown on NBC Sports Philadelphia Main as well as MLB Plus. So just a little information for those of you out there. You will be able to watch the game at least 2 of the 3 days on the local networks. I should, because one day it's the Plus and one day it's not Plus. As I said, as far as Friday, I gave you my advice. Get a new email address. Just sign up for the free subscription if you don't already have it. At this point, and by the way, there have been times last year that Apple TV Plus allowed you to see the game without having to sign up for anything. So maybe just see if you can watch the game first. But I'm not too worried about that game. It's when we get to the part of the season where you have games on, let's say, Roku or one of those platforms that like the average person doesn't have a subscription for. I think that's where we're going to encounter more problems. Speaking of problems, is it a problem the Flyers have won 2 straight games after John Tortorella was fired? Well, that's Kevin Durso, our Flyers insider from 97.3 ESPN.com next with me, Josh Hennig, here on 97.3 ESPN.
Fakes right, turns left again, turns right, flips it up and in!
Fadeaway corner 3, got it! With 64 games in the books, Florida, Duke, Houston, and Auburn now make their stand at the Alamo Dome for a shot at the title. just 2 wins away from claiming the 2025 NCAA Men's Basketball Championship. Tune in this Saturday to hear Westwood One's exclusive coverage of the NCAA Final Four.
Listen to the NCAA Tournament, the Final Four, on 97.3 ESPN. Coverage begins after Major League Baseball.
We're famous for our buffalo wings. The Piccalilli. When it comes to cooking wings, we're the king. The Piccalilli.
On game day, don't wing it. Take the trip to the Pick, South Jersey's king of the wing. Try their award-winning wings, tails, and ears in mild, spicy, or hot, or signature flavors like garlic parm, hot honey, Jim Beam maple, and more. For eat-in or takeout, get your chicken wing fix on Route 206 at the Piccalilli Inn. Join the flock. Follow them on Facebook for events and game day specials.
Progressive knows there are some surprisingly expensive things in life, like fences. A house with a big yard and a white picket fence was always the dream. But then you saw the price to install a fence and you're wondering if the color is driving the price up. Nobody ever dreams of a beige or a gray picket fence, right? So maybe those fences are cheaper. But no, they're not. Then you remember that switching your home and auto to Progressive could save you hundreds and make all your dreams of a fence come true. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers. Not available in all states.
This is the Town Square, New Jersey Info and Weather Network.
Progressive Insurance presents the Sports Flash on 97.3 ESPN. The Final Four set in men's college basketball for San Antonio on Saturday. Both games can be heard right here on 97.3 ESPN. Florida Gators will take on Auburn in one semifinal matchup, while the Houston Cougars will take on the Duke Blue Devils in the other, all number 1 seeds advancing to this year's Final Four. Sixers back in action Tuesday in New York to take on the Knicks at the Garden. Philadelphia losing Sunday to the Toronto Raptors 127-109. They have now dropped 8 straight. Philadelphia with 18 turnovers in the loss. Lonnie Walker had 23 points. Flyers home tonight facing Nashville. Saturday, they beat the Buffalo Sabres 7-4, have now won back-to-back games. Predators, they come to town having dropped 7 of their last 9. Phillies playing the Colorado Rockies today, home opener. Philadelphia losing to Washington Sunday 5-1, but they took 2 of 3 from the Nationals this weekend to open up the season. Progressive Insurance, bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. I'm Tony Desiri, and that's your Sports Flash on 97.3 ESPN.
It happens more than you think. A customer wants, needs the goods and services your business offers. No matter how hard they try, they can't find you, but they find your competitor right there at the top of the results page.
And even if they do find your website, when they click, it's like a ghost town.
Hello?
Outdated, not compelling, and perhaps worse, it has information that's not accurate.
Y2K?
But how do you fix that? At Town Square Interactive, we have the tools to help you maximize your online presence. Just go to mylocalcustomers.com and start by getting a free local customer analysis.
This online tool will show you just how many customers in your area you could be reaching. To get in front of those customers, we will build a premium website for your business.
One that shows up well in web searches and converts website clicks into phone calls, appointments, and foot traffic.
It's simple, it's fast, and it's affordable. Go to mylocalcustomers.com and get started by getting your free local customer analysis today.
From the Town Square, New Jersey Info and Weather Network, I'm Chief Meteorologist Dan Zarrow. March going out like a lamb? A cold front driving in around of rain and thunderstorms as the grand finale of our recent warm stretch. So we'll see some storms tonight. The worst of it could be some gusty wind and heavy rain. Overnight low temperature dips to 46. Rain is done by daybreak. Sunny, breezy, and cooler tomorrow, high 55. Clouds and sun Wednesday, high of only 52. Get weather 24/7 wherever you are. Download our free mobile app today.
97.3 ESPN has teamed up with Seize the Deal for incredible weekly offers from some fantastic local restaurants. Here's this week's big deal.
Get a $50 gift card good for use at Tuckahoe Inn in Marmora for just $25.
Get this great deal starting Friday at 9 a.m. at seizethedeal.com. Hurry, chances are this deal will sell quickly. For more info on this great deal, go to seizethedeal.com.
This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Before we check back on the text board at 609-403-0973, your DMs into the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank. You see, we do have the Flyers coming up tonight on 97.3 ESPN. And I wanted to get our Flyers insider Kevin Durso from 97.3 ESPN.com on because the Flyers fired John Tortorella. the season's almost over. Then they win 2 straight games. Matvei Michkov has 4 goals in those 2 games. Michkov is literally telling the broadcasters he's trying to get hat tricks in every game because he's mad that the Rookie of the Year award he's not a favorite for right now. So the question we have for Kevin Durso, among many, is Kevin, first of all, welcome into the show. Again, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Josh. How are you?
I saw you laughing in the background, so I figured I made you wait long enough. So how much of the Flyers winning is them firing Tortorella, and how much of it is Michkov saying, everyone get the bleep out of my way, I'm going to win the Rookie of the Year award?
Well, Michkov is an individual situation there, so him doing that is him sticking it to everybody else, and you can only, one person can only do so much in this equation. So he could go out there and still be having the multi-goal games, and they could still lose 5-2.
That one breakaway, he could have passed it. You and I both know that one breakaway he scored, he could have passed it, but he was like, nope, I'm keeping this.
There's a lot of determination in particular. So I finally got back. I haven't been to the last couple of home games. I finally got back on Saturday. In my opinion anyway, for all the goals I've seen him score so far this year, the second one he had on Saturday, the backhander, is the prettiest one I've seen him score this year. And that just shows you the confidence level. I think him as an individual, it embodies what the team's going through right now, which is it's a kind of a double effect here, because you make a coaching change, there's an immediate lift regardless, because usually the way that this goes is the team feels responsible for something happening. We got the coach fired because we didn't play well enough. And there's usually a lift right then and there to begin with.
Sure.
But to me, because of John Tortorella's coaching style, the reports that are out there about how there was some sort of incident that kind of crossed a line that probably led to this happening sooner, I see a team that is now motivated, that is playing relaxed. They seem free. It kind of like you kind of have to look at it for what it is. When you don't have a guy over your shoulder that's coaching you, that is going to critique your every mistake and possibly sit you down for it, you're going to go out there and probably do a lot of things that you weren't going to do under him in the first place. So they seem more relaxed in that sense. And I think that's reflective of the 2 games, not to mention the fact that you come off of a road trip where you played Washington, Dallas, Toronto, and then play Montreal and Buffalo. I think Montreal totally overlooked the game for a team that's hovering in a playoff spot. Buffalo is right where you are. So I kind of expect that the results are going to potentially be there. That's the reason why I see these things happening, is because you got rid of somebody who probably put a little bit more pressure on them in those spots. And if things really did, as we've heard, the reports really heated up since the trade deadline, then that means for 3 weeks, you kind of were dealing with really tense play. It showed, the way that they played, it showed. And I think now for at least those handful of games right after you make the move, you feel totally different about coming to the rink. You feel energized about it again. Even though your season's over, you're now sitting there looking at these games totally differently as a player and going, let's just end on a high note, because that's the way that they take it. I know the way that everybody else is going to take the results, but the way the players are going to take it is we should end this on a high note. It could, for guys who don't have contracts next year, that matters. They're trying to play for tomorrow. So those things all come into effect. And in Michkov's case, certainly you're thinking about possibly all the lost time you had with, I probably played a certain way. I got sat during some of these games, missed games entirely because I got scratched. I'm going out and just throwing all caution to the wind here. I'm going to do whatever I want to. And it's reflected. I mean, I wasn't at the first game after Tortorella got fired. I was at Saturdays. You can tell from the moment the game starts, he's motivated and he wants to do what, as advertised, take over games, and he was doing it.
Yeah, for those who didn't hear it, so Todd Fedoruk, who does the color commentating for the Flyers games on 97.3 ESPN, the Flyers Radio Network, he told the story that he saw Michkov after, it was on Friday. He saw Friday at practice, and he told the story about how he said, oh, you almost had a hat trick there in the game. And he said Michkov deadpanned him and said, I'll get a hat trick in the next one, and just walked away.
The story that I heard about that was that he looked up and said tomorrow, and just said tomorrow, and damn near did it.
Apparently he's telling everybody, Kevin, though. He's telling everyone, I'm going out here for hat tricks.
Oh yeah, and to me, he's closing in on it the way these last two games have looked. I mean, he should have had it Thursday. He hits the post on an empty net with pretty much point blank range, and couldn't believe that he did. So that's why he's even more motivated now than he was before, because it was there. I mean, Travis Konechny has every reason to shoot that puck into the empty net and feeds it to him and sets him up on a silver platter. And he can't believe he missed that shot. He should have had one. And now he's probably going to spend the rest of the year trying to figure out which game he can get one in. And it just, it further helps. Like, that was a home game Saturday. He's out there trying to do it. He's scoring goals like he was. It gives him a chance to play up to the crowd. He knows how the people feel about him. He's felt that love all season long, and he kind of wants to give it back. I think, Mike asked me on the Sports Bash after Tortorella got fired, how does somebody like Michkov take all of this type of coaching and things like that? And, to me, I think that as the type of competitor that he is, the losing weight on him too. I mean, it weighs on John Tortorella, obviously, because that's all he wants to do is win games all the time. That's just who he is. Michkov's like that too. He just wants to go out and try to win. He said that since day one, even if the expectations weren't there for the team. He thinks he's going to go and help them win every game because he knows he's got the takeover ability that he does. And now he's shown it in a couple of games. And sure, his teammates have helped out tremendously in these other games too. I look at the 7 goals they scored against Buffalo, and I don't just focus in on Michkov at that point. I'm seeing guys who look like, hey, I haven't scored in a while, and it's going to feel really good to score a goal because everything feels free. Noah Cates had one. Tyson Forrester had one. It's like those guys have been waiting for one for a little while too, and you can kind of sense the load off of their shoulders in terms of the way that they have to play. I think it's been a refreshing style for them, and I think that one thing that's kind of important about this going forward is that whoever the next coach of the Flyers is, whether you stick with Bradshaw or go somewhere else with this, and I think they're going to probably go somewhere else, is you kind of want to see what's working right now stylistically and see what guys are able to do maybe when they're not so hyper focused on the defensive end and the checking side of it. It's still important to do, but it seems like guys are a little bit more willing to take chances offensively now than they were before, and that could go a long way to who you select as the next coach of the team in terms of trying to find a style that works to help maybe move this thing along faster, because they've, as I put it to Mike, Travis Konechny's not as bad as he was during that losing streak, and Owen Tippett's not as bad as he's been during that losing streak and things like that. It's just, it all piled on. It snowballed big time, and now if you can get some of that back with maybe a slight style change or just seeing them more relaxed, that could help you make a decision going forward about where you want this team to be in a few years.
Talking with our Flyers insider, Kevin Durso from 97.3 ESPN.com at Kevin_Durso on the Twitter X platform, joining us here on 97.3 ESPN. Flyers puck drop coming up in about 30 minutes from now. If I can just backtrack something you said before, because you unloaded a lot of stuff there, so I want to try to just decipher it a little bit. So you mentioned earlier about how, the pressure of Tortorella was starting to pressure on the players. And so how much of that was maybe Danny Briere as a former player, maybe observing how this was impacting the team? And I'm not trying to put words in anyone's mouth, but Danny Briere did bring up that this was a lot of stuff building. It wasn't just the Tuesday incident, right? And so it was part of maybe Briere, was it like, hey, John, we try to talk about this. It's just not working. I see it's negatively impacting the players, and that's why we're letting you go, kind of conversation, instead of it just being like any other team firing a hockey coach because they think they have to.
Yeah, well, it's certainly the series of events that they're talking about, and while we're not going to know all of the details of those series of events, just the fact that we even have an idea of what may have happened even just that Tuesday, and it goes beyond. We started that whole thing with just the post-game comments, just the idea that, wow, a coach actually came out and just said, I don't want to learn. I'm not interested in learning how to coach a team in this type of situation, in this type of season. Well, that's, it's why for me, my first thought was that sounds like a guy who's probably not back next year. I certainly didn't think 2 days later we were going to be hearing about something. But when you start to piece together the idea that there was more than just this, that something may have happened on Tuesday earlier when Cam York is sat on the bench for 50 minutes and apparently tries to, go to the coach and voice his displeasure with it, and it turns into a bigger scale incident than what, they could kind of look past. It goes back to right after the trade deadline, Cam York was a scratch. And the similarities between what kind of happened with Cam York and what happened last season with Sean Couturier really kind of bring this to the forefront, because Sean Couturier took it to the, and he's not really an outspoken kind of guy, but took it to the media after he was scratched, after being named the captain last season, and kind of expressed, I don't know the reason. If somebody would like to tell me the reason, I'll work on that reason, but I don't really know the reason. And John Tortorella always kind of had this open door policy where he wanted the players to kind of challenge him and come to me with your discrepancies about why you're not playing or why you're scratched or whatever it may be. Morgan Frost, for example, last season got better down the stretch as the season went on, supposedly because of a conversation that happened, let's say, roughly January-ish. He went to the coach, asked, why am I constantly getting scratched? Started to play better when he kind of took that matter into his own hands and got more of an explanation. Then Sean Couturier is telling you the same kind of policy, but I didn't go to him. He didn't come to me. I don't know the reason. I'll just have to take it, and that it is what it is. But that, especially once you named him captain, that apparently didn't sit too well in the room. And if it follows again, especially after this season wasn't going the same way, I think people can kind of understand when John Tortorella plays the same cards in a playoff race, when there's something at stake and the games matter and he sees something that's worth sitting a guy down or whatever the case may be. When you're out of it, I don't think it sits well, because it's, what does it matter kind of? The player is probably sitting there going, does it really come to this, that you've got to do this to me, that you got to publicly embarrass me to a degree, and then you're not going to explain what the reason is. You don't want to talk about it in the media, which understandable. They don't need to talk about it with me or anybody else, but you don't want to talk about it man to man, face to face. You need me to come to you. I feel like that kind of, as a player, probably maybe crosses a line, because now it looks like I'm challenging you. I don't, most players don't go through their development process knowing to challenge the coach. They kind of know to respect the coach, take the decision, and work harder for it. So whatever kind of built up over the course of it, it seems like it was centered around Cam York was a healthy scratch the day after the trade deadline, was then benched again on Tuesday. We're not talking about that many games in between, so clearly this was building. Seemed like it kind of got into the room too, and the culture kind of shifted. And for what it's worth too, John Tortorella also seemed like he really wanted players on the roster or different options on the roster, I should say, for positions that were struggling to a degree. They made all the trades they did, made 3 call-ups. They only get 4 post-trade deadline. They made 3 of them immediately to fill out the roster. And then when it came down to it, they played Chicago on a Sunday afternoon. Ivan Fedotov's the guy in goal. He gives up 7. John Tortorella kind of throws his hands up in the air, probably looks and goes, I can't play this guy. Get me the next guy. So they call up Alexei Kolosov. Well, now you're out of call-ups. So when Cam York's a problem to John Tortorella anyway, and you go, I'm not playing this guy now either, give me another player, they go, we can't. We're out of call-ups. You have to play him. So that can weigh on him, and apparently things kind of got a little bit tenable here with this. It was a little bit, the demeanor changed around the environment in, behind the scenes supposedly, and that kind of is what was kind of what we're talking about with it built up. It just became a situation where whatever John Tortorella was looking for, he was getting increasingly frustrated, both with the losing and with, I guess, certain players on the roster, and it all reached a head. And Tortorella just they aired it over the course of the road trip, a 4-part interview with NBC Sports Philadelphia, and one of the parts of the interview was about his future, and he kind of poses it as a challenge, like, if you're not satisfied with the way that I'm doing things or don't agree with it enough, and you want me to get out, just tell me to get out and I'll get out. But it's almost like a challenge to the general manager. Are you daring enough to do it? And to Danny Briere's credit, something must have happened so substantial, as it appears. Obviously, not only did Tortorella get fired, but Cam York sat an entire game in uniform on the bench for disciplinary reasons. It reached a head, and Danny Briere did what he felt he had to do. He had the full support of Keith Jones and Dan Hilferty behind that. They're going to enter a coaching search now as the result of this, that maybe they weren't prepared to enter if everything was the way that it was intended to be. But it got to a point and they made the change, and now you're looking for the next head coach.
Couple more for Flyers insider Kevin Durso joining us here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, the Flyers coming up in about 20 minutes from now here on 97.3 ESPN. Also, you can listen on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle. Kevin, you mentioned before about the future of the coach. And I believe it should not be Bradshaw. Nothing against Brad. Seems like a nice guy and everything. But I think that he is the guy to get them to the finish line. He's not the guy moving forward. To me, I look around the NHL right now, and I go back in my mind to think what Craig Berube meant to the Blues years ago. And what, we saw a decade ago happen with the Blackhawks, right? And what happened with different teams where you had young players ascending and you just needed somebody completely different walking in that locker room. So to me, I think the best thing this organization can do is get somebody who is not Tortorella, not Bradshaw, someone who's not associated with either guy.
Yeah, and I think to your point with that, I think you take Bradshaw and connect him to John Tortorella more because Shaw doesn't really have head coaching experience. He's only done this on an interim basis a couple of times, and that's about as far as it goes. I agree with you. I think that what you start with is, with all due respect to all of the coaches that have been on the bench, you gut this thing. You let whoever the next guy is create his own coaching staff beyond himself and pick a new head coach and eliminate all ties to John Tortorella from the bench. Even though Bradshaw seems like the good communicator, kind of the good cop to John Tortorella's bad cop, still gut the thing, I would say. I mean, you already were going to hear conversations about Rocky Thompson because the power play has been so abysmal for most of the year that it's more performance-based than anything in terms of the noise around him. I don't think Bradshaw's done a bad job with his responsibilities, the penalty kill or the defense. It's just, I think you need to start fresh. So I agree with you on that one. And, there's always going to be kind of conversations that coaching circle is so small that there's usually kind of connections in different ways to different things. So you're trying to tread lightly on kind of starting new. I agree with you though, that I think you do need to make it a situation where, it's not connected to anything that was John Tortorella's bench in any way. And you just start over with this thing. It's kind of what goes to the general manager and the president of hockey operations here. Danny Briere and Keith Jones get their chance now. Usually when you name a new general manager, a coaching change usually isn't too far behind because the general manager usually has a guy in mind that he wants to build the team for from a coaching perspective. They get their chance now too. This is their chance to kind of explore the options and pick their guy that they latch their future success to. So I think that's a fair assessment for sure.
Before I let you go, because I had Scott Laughlin on the show last Thursday, because Gil had you on the Sports Bash, and then I had someone else come on, and Laughlin brought up the idea that, he doesn't think Briere is going to keep all the first-round picks. And he talked about the idea of trading the picks for a player or players, not just getting more draft picks. And, one of the names that he mentioned was Morgan Riley, defenseman for Toronto. And the reason why I bring him up specifically is because you and I have talked for years about the issue with the defensemen on this team. And I was having a back and forth with Mike Gill the other day, and I was explaining to him that, look, if Sanheim is paired with a better defenseman, like he was with Team Canada, he looks like a much different player, right? So to me, I think the Flyers' priorities offseason needs to be go out and get a couple top-tier defensemen. So now you're not asking Sanheim and all these other guys like Drysdale to be the number one. Now you're bringing them down a notch, and you're elevating everyone because, Kevin, I don't care how much Tortorella is yelling at these guys. These guys are just not good enough skaters on defense, and you need better people back there.
Yeah, no question about it. And because right now I think also you're stuck with guys that probably qualify as really good second pair guys, maybe borderline top pair guys if they really reach that potential. Sanheim's a good example of it. I think he can play the minutes, but he's not the guy. You need to put somebody else with them who can deliver on that. Yeah, I don't know that Morgan Riley is that guy specifically, but one of the things I look at with Morgan Riley's skill set, at least, is you get a guy who can move the puck. He's definitely a mobile defenseman who's a good skater. And quite frankly, I don't know that there's a defenseman on the roster right now. There's guys I think you want to be this guy, but I don't know if there's anybody who's really a true good power play quarterback. And Riley probably could be. I mean, we're probably having to go back to the very beginning of this here, we're probably having a different conversation about Matvei Michkov and Rookie of the Year in the Calder Trophy if the power play is even just 5 goals better. And he's part of that in some way. If he has a couple more goals, a few more points, I mean, if the power play is even 2-3% better than what it is, it's 13.7% right now. The league low is 12.4, and they were kind of challenging for it a little bit with the offer in March that they had up until literally the game after John Tortorella got fired. So that loosened that up too, apparently. But you get that sense where if they could get that, even just get the power play to 15-16%, and that adds a handful more goals to the total, how many of those does Michkov factor into? What would his numbers look like if that happened? You know, I had said it was impressive to me that he was over 50 points without the power play being good, and he's come out since then and put up 5 points in the last 2 games and gotten to 56, and all of a sudden 60-65 is back on the table the way this is going if he can keep it going long enough. He's certainly, there's no doubt in my mind, he's sitting on 24 goals. He'll get to 25, and that's a pretty substantial accomplishment too for not having a power play. If they had, again, if they had even just a slightly more competent power play, is a 30-goal season as a rookie on the table for him? Probably. So you can see the skill sets there with him, and if they had a guy who could probably quarterback that better, I wonder what the numbers would look like. Riley would be probably a really good option there for that. I don't know how much Riley would be a guy who would help the defensive side of things as much. He's kind of more, again, that more mobile guy. So, but I think they also need more guys like that too, because I've kind of looking at some of the things that they've done draft wise, and this is a great way to bring the 3 picks into it, depending on how, however many they decide to use. And I don't want to, they have the 3 in the first, and I do think that there's a good chance they don't use all 3 and they try to move at least one of those. I don't want to gloss over the 4 second-rounders that all could kind of be top 15-ish of the round that could become equally as valuable. An early second-round pick that can be lumped with a first to really change the dynamic here in some way. Don't overlook that fact either, that they have those 4 picks too. So of those 7, there's a lot of options in play. And I wonder, even just with their picks, if they were to select players, they've done, they've selected guys, and I'll just go to the most recent pick they made in the first round, which is the only one they made last year, Jet Lachenko. They picked him 13th after trading back from 12th to, now they add another pick in that whole mix by doing that. But when they gave up the pick at 12, Zeev Boyum was the pick that the Minnesota Wild made after the trade. And Boyum's all over the place right now in headlines. He's one of the top college players. He's playing for University of Denver, who just went back to the Frozen Four. So there's a lot of buzz around him. And Lachenko just finished his junior season. He's gone pro again now. He's playing for the Phantoms. He just got his first pro point the other day. But his profile, once they made the pick, was he's a good two-way guy. He's killed penalties. He kind of was qualified as a safe pick. And Boyum would be more of this mobile defenseman who's a little bit more, kind of more of the swing that Michkov was, let's say. They really kind of need to add some players when they draft that don't qualify into the safe category. They really need to take some bigger swings to have the potential to get players that we end up talking about for years down the line as top players. Just because, because this goes back to kind of the focus on the wins that they've had. Now they're hovering slightly outside the top 5 and that's just lottery odds. That's not necessarily where they would end up picking. But everybody wants them to end up with the 3rd best odds and have a better shot at that 1st or 2nd pick, because it feels like a slam dunk when you pick there. I'm going to pick a superstar. I'm going to pick a guy who has great numbers wherever he's playing. He's going to look like the next big thing. Same way it happened when they picked in 2017 and Nolan Patrick was the number 2 pick. It's, well, this guy's going to solve a lot of your problems. Of course he is. He's pick number 2. They always, the top 5 picks should always end up panning out, and they don't always pan out. There's a lot of guys we end up talking about who didn't go top 5 that become superstars because you took the chance on the swing of the upside. I think about in a draft that wasn't highlighted as so great, and ironically enough, it's one of the players we started this conversation with, Travis Sanheim's draft year in 2014. He was picked 17th overall. Turns out to probably be a fine pick for 17th overall. Has had a nice long career, middle pairing kind of guy, makes total sense. But the pick 8 picks later that the Boston Bruins made at 25th overall was David Pastrnak. Now, he's qualified as a league superstar, but He wasn't picked top 5. They saw something in this kid, and he turned out to, doesn't hurt when you get to play with some of the guys he's played with over his career also. But you're looking for a guy who maybe you can pick that's a little bit of a swing right now, and then say, let's put him next to Michkov down the road. And now we get two guys who are swing players who have that skill set that is a little bit higher up. I think about, we've talked a lot about Cam York. I think about how they picked Cam York ahead of Cole Caulfield. Cole Caulfield's on his way to a possible 40-goal season this year compared to what Cam York has been, which is at times steady, but not that offensive defenseman, not quite that superstar level guy. He's just a nice player. And you end up with a lot of nice players picking safe versus superstar players by taking the big swing. You see what Michkov is that swing. That's what I think people are looking for. And if they can go and do more of that with these draft picks over not just this year, but this year's, next year's, whatever they decide to do, or take your swings in different ways with guys who have done a little bit more than lead into the draft. If there's a restricted free agent that you want to offer sheet out there you think has high potential that you're willing to take a swing on, throw an offer sheet his way. See if you can't challenge a team to match, or if they don't match, you brought the St. Louis Blues into this conversation at one point too. The Blues are on their way to making the playoffs after it looked like they were dead in the water at one point. They made a coaching change this year too, and they started their whole year, their offseason, with 2 offer sheets from Edmonton because Edmonton couldn't afford to keep all of their players if they wanted to pay their superstars. Those 2 guys, Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg, have been key parts of their team all year long, and it's really coming to fruition now as they're going to make a playoff run and be one of those last teams in. And the way they're playing, I know that it's not about just getting into the playoffs as the end goal here when this rebuild is over for the Flyers and being a wild card team. But I wouldn't want to play the St. Louis Blues right now because it seems like they're winning at a high clip because they're just highly motivated. They're on a roll right now that can't be stopped. Feels a little bit like 2019 when they won a Stanley Cup and they were the team that was on a roll too. So stranger things have happened, but that whole season for them started with adding a center and a defenseman through offer sheets. And the Flyers could certainly use centers and defensemen to build this thing out. So you never know. That might be a place you take some of your picks or some of your observations and try to take swings in that direction too. But that's what I would do. And if I was in Danny Briere's shoes, is take bigger swings, because I think you've got a lot of safe picks. You got a lot of guys who I think if you can maximize them are good depth players. You need the guys at the top, and you might need to take some bigger swings than you have been in the past to get them.
Flyers puck drop in about 10 minutes from now. He's Kevin Durso, our Flyers insider from 97.3 ESPN.com at Kevin_Durso on the Twitter X platform. And, of course, check out the Flyer Files that he hosts as well for even deeper Flyers coverage over on the 97.3 ESPN YouTube channel. Kevin, I got to let you go. I feel like you and I could talk in these conversations for like an hour. So I do have to let you go before I do run out of real estate here.
Absolutely. So. No, I got you.
Take care, my friend.
You got it. Thanks, Josh.
Josh Hennig live in the Ocean Casino Resort Studios on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. We'll wrap up the Power Hour on the other side.
Score a huge 3-pointer this month during the Matt Blatt Kia Gladness Sale. 0 down, 0 payments for 90 days, or low 1.9% financing for 60 months on every new Kia Sportage and Sorento SUV in stock. Here's a steal. Get up to $5,000 more than Kelley Blue Book fair market value for any trade. Toward the purchase of any new 2024 Kia with no payments till June. How about a 3-point play? 0 down, 0 payments until June on over 1,100 new Kias in stock, or low 1.9% financing for 60 months, plus 120% more for your trade. It's Gladness, baby, at Matt Blatt Kia in Abington, Egg Harbor Township, and Toms River, or right to your front door.
It's gotta be a Matt Blatt Kia.
With approved credit, $1,389 per thousand financed. Not all will qualify. Credit may affect down payments. Offers can't be combined. Trade less miles and dealer recon on new 2024 Kia purchase. Go to mattblattkianj.com for complete details, or 888-505-6670. Price includes all costs to be paid by consumer, except for licensing, registration, and taxes through KMF. Rebates and incentives to dealer. Expires 4/4/25. Matt Blatt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, and on Route 37 in Toms River.
Hey, Green Gobbler here. So you've got a clogged drain in your bathroom. Water in the sink's overstaying its welcome. You're spitting today's toothpaste on top of yesterday's toothpaste. You hope that it go away. Yeah, clogs don't just go away. I make them go away. I'm Green Gobbler, the only clog dissolver you need. I'm bleach-free, safe for your pipes, and I work. Guaranteed or your money back. Because I never met a clog that was gonna unclog itself. Green Gobbler. Let the gobbler get it.
Okay, everyone, what did you think of the chocolate bar?
It's too chewy.
Feels kind of chalky.
Too much nougat.
I need to go brush my teeth.
Business is booming for Steph's small marketing research firm.
After all these focus groups, there's only one conclusion. I need more researchers.
And she's way too busy researching
Does this have peanuts?
to waste time researching resumes.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Put our matching platform to work so you can spend less time searching and more time connecting with talented candidates. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Taxes was feeling so stuck. Sitting in traffic, squeezing into a parking spot, all to squeeze in getting tax help during your lunch break. Now Taxes is a TurboTax expert who does your taxes for you, while you go about your day getting real-time notifications about their progress and the most money back guaranteed. Now this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile apps. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.
Welcome to AutoZone. What are you working on today?
My car is making this noise. Sometimes it's like doot, and sometimes it's like grrr.
Do you have a dash light on?
Oh, yeah.
And we don't have to listen for clues. With the free Fix Finder service, we can read a check engine, ABS, or maintenance light to find the likely fix and even recommend a local shop if you need one.
So you don't need to hear the grrr.
Not with Fix Finder. Free at every AutoZone.
Get in the zone, AutoZone.
Restrictions apply.
We're famous for our buffalo wings. The Piccalilli. When it comes to cooking wings, we're the king. The Piccalilli.
On game day, don't wing it. Take the trip to the Pick, South Jersey's king of the wing. Try their award-winning wings, tails, and ears in mild, spicy, or hot, or signature flavors like garlic parm, hot honey, Jim Beam maple, and more. For eat-in or takeout, get your chicken wing fix on Route 206 at the Piccalilli Inn. Join the flock. Follow them on Facebook for events and game day specials.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennick on 97.3 ESPN and on the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Before we get out of here, I do want to address, just really quick, because we don't have time to get to the Eagles stuff today. We'll get to it tomorrow. For the Eagles and the tush push and that whole fiasco going on, will it be voted down? Will it not be voted down? I just want to put it out there like this, because this is my primary position on the subject. I think that if you are a football fan, it shouldn't matter if the Eagles are good or bad at the tush push. The conversation comes down to this. If you know anything about football from the first 30 years of the sport, the tush push is as close to that style of game as you will ever see today. If you get rid of the brotherly shove play, you are basically telling the first 40 years of football to shove it. Have a great night, everybody.
Every choice you make matters. Whether you're dining out, grabbing takeout from your favorite local.
And for the YouTube-only crowd, thank you for staying tuned. And I just want to follow up on that point I made, because I'm not going to belabor this point, because we're going to know a lot more tomorrow about what the owners do or do not do. But for those who did not hear it, so NFL Network insider Ian Rappaport was on the Pat McAfee show earlier today. And when he was asked about the reports so for those who don't know the whole story, you might have watched me and Rob Motti had this conversation on Friday's show. And part of the conversation was about the play, the tush push, the brotherly shove. For those who don't fully understand, okay, why this play is significant. The play is basically a hyper-exaggerated quarterback sneak, where the quarterback just keeps the ball, tries to slide up under the center or the guard and get a first down or a touchdown. It's a play that's been around for as long as football has been played. But the way that they're executing it is under controversy, because instead of the quarterback just doing a normal sneak, he's getting a shove, quote unquote, from someone behind him or alongside of him to help propel him forward to get more yards. And the Eagles are better at this play than anyone else. And the idea is that people are trying to use all kinds of excuses like injury concerns and etc. about why it should be banned. So NFL insider Ian Rappaport, he gave this explanation for the latest of what's going on down there, because Diana Rossini from The Athletic reported over the weekend, and past guest here on 97.3 ESPN with me, Josh, and Kaylin Kaler, formerly of The Athletic, now with ESPN.com. They are both reporting that there is growing momentum of people who are against this play. So Ian Rappaport gave the latest earlier today on the Pat McAfee show. Take a listen.
I don't know that it's getting banned, but I do feel kind of like Groundswell of maybe rewriting it. Rewriting it would make some sense. And I think what they're nervous about, NFL officials have said very publicly, there's not enough injury data to see if it's something that like long-term could be a play that's sort of like an injury-filled play. But what they're nervous about is some catastrophic injury to like an offensive lineman. I think the center is probably most at risk. And then you react and say, then ban it. So I think they're trying to get ahead of it.
And I totally get that. It's better to be proactive than reactive. All right? I get it. I totally understand it. And from that perspective, I don't hate it. I don't hate the idea of saying, let's be proactive, not reactive. Let's try to get on top of this. That part of the conversation, I don't mind. And if that's what the outcome ends up being, then I think most people are going to be willing to accept that. What has created so much angst among folks out there is the reality that you're doing more than just saying safety. Because again, as he said, there's no empirical data to say this has been an unsafe play. Number two, as I said before I got off 97.3 ESPN FM, this is a play that dates back to the origins of football. 1880s, 1890s, 1900s, 19-teens. Football that we know today was played more like rugby than it was what you and I know as football today. So if you are a organization like the Eagles, you're basically doing a bit of a hat tip, a bit of a curtsy, a bit of a respect the past every time you run this play. Football at one point in time was the toughest of tough men's sports. When, for those who don't know the history, there was a time that people wanted to make football illegal because young men were actually dying on football fields, okay? You go back to the 1890s and early 1900s. Young men in college football were dying because of the brutality of the sport, and it was generally just unsafe in general. Bring it forward to what happened next. President Teddy Roosevelt, he called all of the major heads of all the universities, Princeton, Yale, Harvard, Rutgers, he brought them all to the White House. And he told them, because there was a lot of perspective of like, is Teddy Roosevelt going to be part of this let's make football illegal deal? And what Teddy Roosevelt did is he sat down all these major university executives. He says, I think on its surface, football is good for young men. It gives them structure. It gives them understanding teamwork. It teaches them to work hard and achieve and fight for what you want like the military would. And he said he thought that the football, and in theory, was a good alternative for young men who weren't really maybe fit for the military. But he told them, he says, you got to make this game safer. And if we don't sit down and find ways to make this game safer right here, right now, he said the people who come into this office after me, talking about the President of the United States, he said that man is going to be given a referendum by the American people to get rid of this game. So that day, that moment, they started to change the game. That's when they started introducing the leather helmets. That's when they started changing, the rules in terms of having, 4 downs to get a first down. They started changing the rule to allow the forward pass eventually. They changed the rules to have it so that, the referee's discretion, he can stop a play if he realizes it's going nowhere, right? There were so many different parts that they brought into the game. Later they brought in the padding. They brought in, the better cleats. They changed, how the uniforms fit on the men. I mean, there's actually, if you go back in history, there were actually some games in the 1880s where men were wearing suits and ties playing basically rugby. It's ridiculous compared to where it is today. And so, and by the way, that's part of the reason why in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, the military academies became, and the private institutions like Notre Dame became so dominant at college football back in those days, was because all of the rule changes that were made for safety actually created an environment where military men were actually better at the game than the regular man because of the structure and the discipline and the you must follow the rules or else element to the game back then. But the game back then had a lot of what you see right now from the Eagles. This brotherly shove, this tush push, this exaggerated quarterback sneak. So if you're someone who's against that play, whether it's for safety reasons, whether it's for aesthetics, whether you say it's not a real football play, whatever your mentality is, to me, what you're basically telling Teddy Roosevelt, what you're telling, the early founders of football, to basically go bleep themselves. And I don't think you want to do that. Because if it wasn't for where football was, we wouldn't be here today. Football is a billion-dollar industry because of the rugged nature of the game, because of the unaesthetic nature of the game. Listen, if you want the game to just be, all glitz and glam and all fashion and style points, that's your prerogative. But I'm not going to hang out with you there. I'm not going to buy into that lie. Because the one element that makes football still different than the other major team sports is that it is still a game played by men. It is still one of the few platforms in American culture where meritocracy still reigns. So much of society is nepotism. So much of society is who you know, not what you know. And so as a result, football is one of the few sports where merit is king. Baseball can't say that half the time. Hockey, hit or miss, right? Basketball, we know it's not a meritocracy, okay? It's obvious. So you have one sport left that leans on the ideals of the American dream. The idea of becoming more than you are, elevating your position in life. So many men were nobodies and became somebodies because of American football. And these men today have life-changing money because of the rugged nature, the element of earning your place among the greats. So to me, that's what the brotherly shove really represents. And people like Sean McDermott, the Buffalo Bills head coach, can talk about player safety, and people around the NFL can be all crybabies about it. But at the end of the day, this is a football play. And if you take that out of the game, you're basically telling the history of the game that you don't matter. And in a world today where everyone seems to be very concerned about remembering the history of sports, it seems very convenient that this one situation, we want to ignore that history. Thanks for watching the post-game show here on the post-show on the YouTube channel, not post-game. My brain is on post-game because I turned it around. They're still doing post-game stuff on television. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, share with your friends. I appreciate you tuning in. At Josh Hennig on YouTube. Josh Hennig on Instagram. Joshua S. Hennig on Instagram. At Josh Hennig on Twitter X. And I'll catch you all tomorrow right here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle, and on my YouTube channel right here at Josh Hennig. Take care, everyone.